My name is Amy Bach. I'm so pleased that you were able to join us today, and pleased that United Policyholders is able to be a conduit for information to you this morning with the expert information that we're bringing you. If you're not familiar with United Policyholders, we are a 501c3, which means we're a nonprofit. We've been in business for 30 years as a consumer advocacy resource. We started around the time of the Oakland-Berkeley wildfire and have been working since that time to bring information and a voice to both people who've been impacted by disasters and need to use their insurance, as well as people who have bought insurance and have had something bad happen, need to use the insurance. So we are both an information resource and a voice for consumers of insurance. So we have a lot of expertise in property insurance and solutions for the problems that can arise after losses and disasters. We're supported by donors, grants, and volunteers. We're a trusted source for the media. And our voice is respected in courts and legislatures as a problem-solving resource. So we bring our information and do our work through 3 programs. The Roadmap to Recovery, helping people and businesses navigate insurance, repair, and rebuilding challenges and restore assets after losses. The Roadmap to Preparedness, through which we help people buy smart, shop smart, and also really understand the lay of the land when it comes to protecting assets by buying insurance. And then through our Advocacy and Action program, we are involved in the courts, in legislatures, trying to solve problems. So for example, right now, in addition to all the work that we're doing to help disaster survivors get through the process less painfully than it is for some people now, by removing some obstacles in the insurance process and getting money into people's hands faster, we are involved in a national effort to help businesses collect their business interruption benefits during COVID. So we've got a lot going on. We're a busy group. We're small but mighty. We still have a relatively small staff, but we have a national core of volunteers and experts that share their information with us. And so that's me. I've been an insurance consumer advocate since 1984. I do a lot of work in California, but also outside of California, trying to solve problems wherever we can. These are 2 of the books that our organization publishes. The Little Yellow Book has been an aid to primarily wildfire survivors over the years. And then we have a buying guide here. But I'm not going to go into a whole lot more detail about UP and what we do, because we have a very special focus today. Today is not one of our normal Roadmap to Recovery workshops or Roadmap to Preparedness workshops where we're talking all about insurance here. We are joined today by one of the hardest working women that I know, Kathy Yanni, and also we may hear a little bit from Phil Strunk as well. But what we're here for today is to convey information to all of you who have been embroiled in a pretty complicated process over the last 5 years, 6 years, 7 for some of you. And I know there's a lot of emotions out there, a lot of frustration, but a lot of, I hope, optimism that there's some light at the end of this tunnel. And while, you know, I'm often in the position of talking to audiences and people who are really hurting, and I know this is an audience that has gone through a lot. And so it can be very hard to kind of absorb information in a calm way, but that's our goal, is to try to, we took all the questions that were submitted. We got questions from individuals. We got questions that have come directly to the Fire Victim Trust. We got questions that some of your lawyers conveyed to us on your behalf. We took all those questions and we boiled them down. And Kathy and Phil have put together this slide deck. Now, I know that we are not providing an opportunity for you to ask questions today live because there are so many of you, and that's obviously in and of itself a sad thing, that so many people were impacted by the conduct and the actions that gave rise to there being funds available to compensate you. So just to wrap up here, we're here to give you information, news you can use. I can't promise that every single question will be answered the way everybody wants it to be, but we will do our best. And then at the end, we will make suggestions for how you can get further answers. But generally, I'm a member of the Oversight Committee for the Fire Victim Trust, which means that I have a very limited role in making sure that the trust is operating according to its charge and that it's executing its responsibilities. And I've been very impressed with Kathy and her team. And I know that they've been working incredibly hard. The lawyers that I've had contact with that are part of the Oversight Committee with me are working incredibly hard as well. So while we may not be able to please all the people all the time here, we are here in the interest of getting information out to you to hopefully calm a little bit of your concerns, but also clarify things for you as to where exactly things stand with the trust assets and when each of your claims is going to be processed if it hasn't already been in the works. So I want to again thank Kathy for her time and Phil, and we're just going to get started.
Thank you. I was going to say thank you very much, Amy. I appreciate the warm introduction. As Amy said, I'm Kathy Yanni. I'm the claims administrator for the trust. I've been involved in working with claimants on a variety of projects, many of them pharmaceutical cases. I also worked on the San Diego fire cases and have been involved in these kind of programs for over 20 years. This is the most complicated program I have ever been involved with. As Amy was alluding to, we have the fires, we have a large corporation, the corporation went bankrupt, we have the bankruptcy process, and then ultimately we have our settlement and the trust was set up. But it has many, many overlays. I appreciate all of you who are here on the phone. I know that this has been a horrible ordeal for all of you, and it continues to be. I try always to remember that our charter is to get you paid and to get that done in as quickly a process as possible. I believe every single person has a claim. I believe that people have been under terrible, terrible circumstances, and it is our goal to get payments accomplished as soon as possible. To that end, I hired what I believe to be the best claims administration law firm in the country, and that is Brown Greer. Phil Strunk, who's on the phone with me, and I have worked together for maybe 20 years. Phil has been at Brown Greer about 20 years. He is a lawyer, same as I'm a lawyer, and we work together every single day. Both of our spouses think we spend more time together than we do with them, which potentially is true. So Phil and I have, as I said, worked on other projects, and we've put our heads together to come up with a process here that we think is the best we can offer you. We again completely understand that this has been a very long and drawn out event. So with that, Phil and I are going to go back and forth and talk about the trust. We're going to talk about the overview of how the claims process works. And then we're going to go by the claim type so that you can understand the different types of claims, the type of information we're looking for. While we'll do that, we'll fold in other issues, which we want you to understand how that impacts what we're doing. And then, as Amy said, we're going to end up with a way that after this you can reach out to us. So we're going to start at the 50,000 foot level and then drill down. So as of yesterday, we have a total of 71,348 claimants. And a claimant is a person, a business, a trust, someone who has a claim in our trust. The number of individual claims, which means a real estate claim, an emotional distress claim, a business claim, we have a total of 230,459 claims. So 71,000 people and 230,000 claims. We are reviewing claims every single day and have been doing that since the claim form was published in August of 2020. So let's go to the next slide. This is the overview slide. And Phil and I are going to walk through this together. So the PG&E filed bankruptcy January 29th, 2019. They settled with the claimants and the lawyers in December 2019. At that point, people and businesses and trusts were asked to file a proof of claim in the bankruptcy court. So I think there is a great deal of misunderstanding about the proof of claim. The proof of claim was like a notice to the bankruptcy court that you had a claim. The bankruptcy judge is Judge Dennis Montali. Judge Montali is still in charge of the bankruptcy, even though the PG&E has come out of bankruptcy. He remains in charge of the proceedings, and that also includes the Fire Victim Trust, which is us. So people filed claims December 31st, 2019. Subsequent to that, as a result of PG&E emerging from bankruptcy, the Fire Victim Trust was created and we were funded. And that happened in July of 2020. So between PG&E filing for bankruptcy and the trust being funded July 1st, we did not exist. So the claims that we received in the Fire Victim Trust came in starting in August of 2020. Phil and his group, and along with my help, wrote the claims process questionnaire. So between July, when we were funded, and August 17th, basically working round the clock, we put together the claims questionnaire. And I'm going to ask Phil to describe how the claims questionnaire works. I often say it's like a TurboTax process, but Phil can give you more detail.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. The claims questionnaire is an online form that's intended to be completed by a claimant's attorney, or if you do not have an attorney, then you can complete it yourself. And the overall goal of the claims questionnaire is to help a claimant enumerate exactly what the claimant wants the trust to pay them for. We would like to know from each person who's making a claim, what were your losses and how would you characterize them, so that at the end of the day, at the end of this program, there's no chance that we've overlooked something that is important to you. as Kathy said, it's sort of like TurboTax. That means it prompts us to, or prompts you to answer certain questions, or prompts the attorney to answer certain questions, and encourages the submission of various supporting documents. One thing that Kathy alluded to that I think is really important is that when the trust was created in July of 2020, it was done so under a trust agreement that, for better or for worse, for better usually, imposes obligations on what the trustee and the claims administrator have to do. It creates requirements that we have to follow in processing claims. And those are really important. I think they protect the fund in a significant way. They also are the source of many of the challenges and complications that are associated with processing a claim, many of which are frustrating for fire victims as they wait for this process to play out. And I guess without repeating what Kathy said, I just want to share that our mission every day is shaped and guided and motivated by the fact that we know fire victims need this money, and they need it as quickly as possible. So to the extent that we have to comply with the trust agreement, we do so, and we do that with the intention of releasing money as quickly as we can. So the claims questionnaire is formed and originated as a result of those requirements in the trust agreement. So the claim types that Kathy and I will talk about later come from the trust agreement, whether you can file for a real property claim or an emotional distress claim. And the way that we solicit information is intended to satisfy obligations that exist in the trust agreement or that exist under California law. Because while it might be nice to, might be fast to distribute money as quickly as we can based on other factors, we're not allowed to do that. We're obligated to stick to California law as much as we can and follow the requirements of the trust agreement. So this claims process that opened, I'm referring now to the fourth box. The claims questionnaire that opened on August 17th, 2020 was the result of the application of those requirements from the trust agreement and a great deal of collaboration, I'd like to say, with the Trust Oversight Committee and the many experienced attorneys who represent fire victims. And personally, I found that the attorneys who represent fire victims are all motivated towards the same goal that we have, which is the payment of eligible claims. And they've been very gracious in providing a lot of guidance and experience that informs this process.
So Phil, if I can just interrupt for a
Please.
second, I have to echo that I have seen, all these different lawyers that are, I mean, normally, they're with different firms, they're competitors, et cetera, but they seem to be working very collaboratively. There has been actually no, as far as I have seen, there's been no kind of infighting that has slowed things down. It feels like most people on the team are trying to move forward as quickly as possible. What is the approximate number of unrepresented claimants, approximate people who don't have lawyers and going through this process?
It's about 10,000. They're
Okay.
10,000 we call pro se claimants. And we'll get into this in more detail, but we have a special group of people in the who take calls in the call center. We have people who deal with and have expertise with the pro se claimants, and we encourage the pro se claimants to contact us, talk to the claims center, talk to Phil, so that we can help them get their claims processed as quickly as possible. I also want to echo what Amy and Phil said. The lawyers we are dealing with in these cases are fantastic. They're experts in fire losses. They work tirelessly with us to help their clients. And I too have been really, really impressed by the quality of lawyering, and the collaboration among all the lawyers has been terrific. The going to the box number 5, because we wanted to get money out in the community as quickly as possible, we established a preliminary payment program. So we reviewed claims that had been submitted to us and signed under penalty of perjury. And when we took a look at those claims at a high level, we would look to see if the claim, we could issue a payment up to $25,000. And we started making those payments November 23rd, 2020. We're continuing those payments today. We will continue the preliminary payment program the entire time we do the claims program, because we still are very dedicated to getting as much money out as soon as possible. As of yesterday, we have paid 6,048 claimants under the preliminary payment program, and we have given out awards of approximately $79 million. And again, we are going to continue that program as long as the trust is open. So going to box number 6, once you submit a claims questionnaire and provide the supporting documents, which we're going to talk a lot about in future slides, your claim becomes eligible to receive a claim determination. A lot of claims have been submitted to us, and the deadline, which is the next slide, 7, the questionnaire deadline was February 26th, just last week, or last week. And that is when we have the 71,000 claimants, who filed. We had a tremendous amount of claims come in the month of February, which is to be expected. And we're reviewing those as quickly as possible. The documents are being submitted every single day as the documents are uploaded into the what we call the portal, where the website and portal where everything is held. We take a look at what we have, and are we missing things, and then we'll talk about getting getting deficiency notices in a second. But I want to go back to talking about the process and the complication of the process. We have agreed, which I think is the absolute right thing to do, that we will give the claimants one lump sum award. So we'll look at all the different types of claims you have. Many claims questionnaires, I think, have 4. The most common is 4 claims, and some have 8 or 12 different kinds of claims. So we look at each claim individually. We have people at Brown Greer and on my staff that are experts in various sections. We have a team of lawyers who are leading the real property claim evaluation. We have another team of lawyers leading the emotional distress and nuisance evaluations. And these are people at Brown Greer, all of whom have worked on other projects. Many of them worked on the Deepwater Horizon BP project. The business team we have worked on the Deepwater Horizon project. And so when I put together my team with Phil's help, we drew on people that had prior experience working in a complicated claims process environment, and they bring to it great expertise. We have people in the programming and computer science department who also have been involved in enormous projects. Again, BP, various other, the NFL case, various pharmaceutical cases. So these are people with a wealth of knowledge on how to put together the best program possible.
Kathy, quick question. So the proof of claim that people filed back in 2019 with the bankruptcy court, just completely different from the claim process that we're talking about here, right? Which is why some people I know feel frustrated. Why did I have to fill out why do I have to do so much paperwork? Obviously you've talked about it, this is complicated, but whatever the claim that people filed in the bankruptcy court is really not, it's not the same as what you're processing at all, correct?
Well, I'll let Phil jump in here in a minute, but the proof of claim is in the bankruptcy court that was filed back in 2019. It's like a notice. It's like raising your hand to say, hey, I have a claim.
Right.
And then we went through the whole bankruptcy, which again, we weren't a part of. The bankruptcy process happened. PG&E came out of bankruptcy. We were created. Now, Phil, we do use some information from the proof of claim.
Yeah.
Maybe you can explain that.
That's right. But so Amy, your point is correct. The proof of claim form is a distinct process. And I apologize to everybody for the fact that we use the word claim so much, because it's disorienting to all of us. But the proof of claim, which would have been due by 12/31/19, merely preserves your right to assert a claim against our trust in this bankruptcy. It doesn't necessarily provide enough information for Kathy Yanni to value your claim. But Kathy is correct that as much as possible, we are leveraging the information provided on the proof of claim form to the benefit of the fire victims. That means that, so what information could we use? Because the form was a fairly general statement of a person's injuries. And while it's certainly compelling what people put on the form, there are some areas where there just isn't enough detail to make a true evaluation of what the losses would be. So it's not like we could send a fair payment to a fire victim on the basis of the proof of claim form.
Understood.
But there is a lot of good information in there. So that was a worthwhile process. And some of the most important stuff that was provided, or the most important content, involved the addresses and the locations where the losses occurred. Because as Kathy and I will explain as we get into the later phases of this, while we are primarily concerned with reviewing your individual submissions and the evidence that you've provided, we do take every opportunity possible to use independent data that's available to us that can help make claims more complete or more eligible or more verifiable, so that payments can be made more quickly. So the proof of claim process did provide some valuable information, but it must be very frustrating for a fire victim to know that they did a claim form back then, and then we asked them to do a more robust claims questionnaire after August of 2020. And we did, and we had to do that. But we don't, in asking that, we're not being insensitive to your time or your commitments. It's the opposite of that. We need a specific statement, a specific articulation of what injuries you suffered so that we can properly value your claim. And I think that kind of takes us, Kathy, into the 8th box, which you're going to get into. I mean, there is a lot to unpack in this particular box, item 8. And we talk about determination notices. Kathy will show us examples later, but what I would like to share, one thing I would like to share with the folks that are listening is how this process will play out from this point forward. So you and your family may have submitted a claims questionnaire where you asserted certain kinds of claims. Hopefully, I'm sure if you have a lawyer, you work very closely with your lawyer to do that, and the lawyers provided a lot of good guidance that we've seen. A quick comment on that. Kathy and I were personally impressed with how much effort and how skillfully the lawyers in this case complied with the February 26th deadline. We've been in other cases together where deadlines were impossible to meet. And even though the burdens were great, I thought the lawyers in this case were really impressive in getting it done by the deadline, which is very important in this context because it enables us to move closer to payment more quickly. So we thank the lawyers for what they've done, the attorneys for the fire victims for what they've done there.
Yeah, I mean, I can just throw in and I having spent so much time with people who have been hit by adversity and are trying to find their way back on their feet and find the financial compensation from the sources that are available, and so what makes this thing so different from, like, say, being a plaintiff in a lawsuit and you're going to have to you have to give a deposition and your lawyer is going to say, I need this and that, this and this and this. When you've been wronged and you're seeking redress from a responsible party, you're always going to have to jump through hoops and you're always going to have to complete paperwork. And the things that make this so much more complicated are the number of people that are involved, right? And that's what I think is important to keep in mind. I know for every disaster impacted household, it's a unique experience, and some people have gone through horrendous experiences around the fires. And it's hard to think, oh, I'm just a number, and you're not. But still, there were so many people impacted by the actions that led to the trust, that it does require, I think, a lot more patience than you normally would bring to a situation. So I just feel like I have to interject that, because I know how easy it is to try to find somebody who's responsible and blame and say, but I'm telling you, as a person who's dedicated their career to keeping things real for people and giving people information in a bite-sized way that you can grasp, that from my organization's observation, and we did a webinar back in before the deadline on the 9th in 2019. We did an educational webinar to help your communities know how to get through this. From my perspective, everything that Kathy and Phil are saying about the lawyers that are involved, and certainly their team, is true. That no one's dragging their feet here, that I can assure you. It's just that there are so many people involved, and so many and the constraints of the trust itself and the bankruptcy. So back to you guys.
That's a good point. That's a good point, Amy. I think it is. This one of the more frustrating things for a fire survivor to hear is that the nature of the bankruptcy resolution itself, it does sort of tie us all together, so that there are ways that all of the claims are related to one another in a sense, because they're all drawing on the same limited amount of money, and the trustee and the claims administrator are obligated to make fair allocations. So that does have an impact on the speed of the process, and that I can't imagine the frustration that people must feel as a result. But I would say again that Kathy and I and everybody who works on this case is motivated by that and wanting to get money to fire victims. Kathy, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You were about to say something about box 8.
Box 8, but well, thank you all for that. I appreciate that. So on the timeline, now you've submitted your claim, and it's complete, and we started issuing determination notices, which is the value of your claim. We started sending out those notices on February 15th. We are going to continue to give those notices on a rolling basis. I personally review claims every single day. And as I approve the claims, they go through the process, they're approved. We take the pieces that we've had, before I approve them. We have the real property piece, the emotional distress piece, the personal income piece. We put them all back together again from our various specialists that are looking at them, and we issue the determination notice. So then it's at that point that I review what the award has been, and I approve it for payment. If it then goes from me to the, I call them the banking. We have a banking team. It goes to the bank, and if you accept, then you will be paid. We are paying people starting March 15th. I underline that word, starting March 15th. If your claim is approved, we're issuing payments twice a month, and we will continue to do that for the length of the trust. So we're giving out determinations. We started last week, February 15th, and we're giving out payments starting March 15th. Now, let's assume a couple different scenarios. I just laid out the absolute simplest one of the process. But let's assume, looking at box 8, we send you a deficiency notice. And what that means is in your group, say it's a husband, a wife, and 2 kids, There's some issue which Phil calls speed bumps. There's some speed bump that we need to resolve before we can issue you a determination notice. So there's a variety of things that end up, I would say, disrupting the process. These are things like insurance issues, bankruptcy issues. Maybe there's a lien of some type. Maybe there's a issue with FEMA. The trust is required by the trust documents to deduct certain payments. FEMA is one of them. Insurance is another one. If you received an award in the WAP process, those are all deducted pursuant to the orders of Judge Montali and the trust documents. So sometimes we don't have all the information we need. And if one, again, if you have filed with us and there are 4 people, for example, 2 parents and 2 kids, if there's any issue with any of those folks claiming, then that creates a deficiency that we have to cure before we can put you back on the road to payment. So Phil and his team reach out to people all the time to resolve any variety of things that are affecting you receiving a payment. We have an insurance group headed by a lawyer who herself is a fire survivor, as she says, Linda Clam. She was part of Amy's initial process she worked on. Linda lost her home in the Oakland fire. She has spent her career working for insureds and helping them with insurance to get proper insurance. She's extraordinarily knowledgeable and sympathetic and has been very helpful with us on the insurance issues. So we need your insurance policies. We have many policies. We're still missing some. We're actively working with the claimants or the lawyers or the individual insurance companies to get the policies matched with the claim that's being made. So those are, I think I've hit most of what are sort of the big speed bumps are. We'll talk about this a little more later in our talk. Phil, you want to jump in here at any point?
Well, I just emphasize reiterate one point you made. What Kathy just described as we flow through these boxes is the process that we must follow to adjudicate claims and assign them value. So you filed a claims questionnaire, and maybe on the basis of that claims questionnaire, we were able or will be able to issue a preliminary payment. That's good, but that is not the same thing as your final claim value, your final amount that you're going to get. So after your preliminary payment, obviously, we'll look at a complete submission with documentation, and we will assign a value based on the standards that are given to us in the trust agreement and under California law. And that is a very complicated process because we have to look at various claim types, and we're going to do that together. We're going to look at all the claim types and give you a claims determination notice that Kathy referenced in the aggregate amount for what your household filed together. And after that happens, you're going to get a different kind of payment. If your claim is eligible and you accept it, you'll get a pro rata payment, which is different than the preliminary payment. The pro rata payment is a portion of your ultimate compensation amount. So whereas the preliminary payment is a bit of a holdover, it's a figure that we want to release based on the information we know. The pro rata payment comes after every aspect of your claim has been considered, and you've had the chance to agree to or even dispute the amount that the trust has assigned as a value. So those are different things, and I guess I just wanted to point out, Kathy probably said this, but I wanted to emphasize that the pro rata payment is sort of the more of your, it's closer to your final adjudication amount. That's one point I wanted to make. And then the second one I want to share is just a comment on how this process works in my experience in claims programs before. I don't think I've ever been in a program where the claims administrator or the trustee started to pay claims, the pro rata amounts, within about 2 or 3 weeks of the claim filing deadline. That's usually not done because there is a need to understand the total universe of everybody who's filed a claim and what they're worth before you can start to make payments. So I know this is a tedious process for all of the people who survived the fires, but I would like to convey that we're trying to make this faster than what a normal process would allow. So from the date that the claim filing deadline occurred, 2/26, to the date when we're going to start to make pro rata payments, 3/15, that's actually pretty compressed in my experience. It just isn't done like that. Having said that, the process by which we issue determination notices, it usually does take a short period of time for that process to ramp up. And that's because, as Kathy alluded to, there are obstacles that prevent us from paying claims. These are usually the resolution of issues that are required by the trust agreement. And we have to offset certain insurance amounts. We have to offset FEMA amounts. That means we have to obtain information about those amounts and then apply them to your claim at the same time as we're performing a substantive evaluation of the claim to give you fair value for what you experience. So the process will speed up. The volume of notices increases over time. And Kathy said this, but I'll reiterate, determination notices will be issued every day. That's an ongoing regular process. And then payments, pro rata payments, will be made twice a month. Did I jump ahead, Kathy? Maybe I jumped ahead.
No, that's
So can I just make sure I'm good? I'm a good check on if it's not clear to me, So we've got 3 towers of payments people are getting, right? We have people could be getting preliminary payments and then a pro rata and then even another pro rata, or just one pro rata and then their final. Is it 3?
Good point, Amy. We don't know exactly how many pro rata payments there will be.
Okay.
There will certainly be 2, and I assume there will be 3, but we haven't determined that yet, or we have not determined when those additional pro rata payments will be. But the first pro rata payment will be March 15th.
Okay.
Yeah, and a quick point about pro rata. Thanks for asking this, Amy, because I personally think this terminology is very confusing. The the preliminary payment is simply an advance.
Right.
It's the trust saying, we know you filed a claim, we know your claim is valid. There is other information we need to obtain before we can tell you the final amount of your claim, but here is an advance.
Right.
So that's the preliminary payment. The pro rata payment is a different thing entirely. And it is a portion of your final award after we've been able to decide what your true and final amount will be. When people get a pro rata payment, you're not going to get one every 2 weeks. My comment is a little bit misleading. When I say the pro rata payments will occur every 2 weeks, what I mean is the trust will issue those to people who have qualified for their first pro rata payment. So if you are part of a family and you filed a claim, you've received a determination notice and you like the amount, you've accepted it, you will get your initial pro rata payment. And then that's it. The trust will have to adjudicate more claims before you're going to get another contribution towards your ultimate amount. And that is one of the most frustrating parts, I'm sure, for a fire survivor who's dealing with this process. You get your money in installments. The reason for that is part of the bankruptcy process that we're in. It has to do with the fact that we are processing claims from a limited fund and we can only pay them in stages so that we ensure that we don't overpay some people to the detriment of others. Right. So to be really clear, you'll get a pro rata payment after your determination notice, and then the trust will be announcing in the future when a additional installment will be available to you. But I want to make it clear that folks that get a pro rata payment shouldn't expect one every 2 weeks. That's not.
So really, you're just trying to juggle the very pressing imperative to get cash to people as quickly as possible, but in a way that's safe and isn't going to screw things up down the line, to put it kind of more.
Yes.
That's
Right.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So quickly going back to you get your determination, slide 8, and then you go to slide 9, and you've decided that there's additional information you've submitted, and after the claims questionnaire was submitted, and you want us to look at additional information that, and you request what we call reconsideration. And you can, at that, I want to stress that you can send us additional information, and we will look at it again. I am the person who makes the decision with regard to reconsideration, whether that affects the value of the claim or not. And I will issue an award. So basically like a second award with my results of the reconsideration. At that point, you can accept our award and go through the payment process, or you can decide that you want to appeal, and we'll look at these documents at the end of our talk. You want to appeal, and if you decide to appeal, you will then go to a process where there are judges and experienced lawyers in fire cases who will review your claim and make a determination on appeal if either the same amount of money should be awarded, more money should be awarded, or potentially even less money, because the appellate panel has the right to review the claim all over again. So they may come to a different conclusion than we have reached in our process, both at the basic level we've been talking about and then through the reconsideration level. So it's like a level, I guess a third stage to looking at the claims.
Okay.
And then let me see, we've talked about 10, issuing our pro rata awards. And then 11 is to raise the entire, going back, we talked about in slide number 3, box number 3, how the Fire Victim Trust is a limited fund. And I think everybody knows this. We received money in cash and we received stock. So in order to get the entire amount of our trust fund, we're going to have to liquidate the stock, obviously turning the stock into cash, and then we will know the entire universe that we have as part of the money to pay claims in the trust. And as Phil said in slide 12, once that's accomplished, we will make additional pro rata shares until all the claims are paid. So as you can see from all of us talking about this, it is a process that we're trying to put together, or we have put together. We're trying to be as expeditious as possible. We're also concerned about being fair to all the claimants in the process. And we have to pay attention to California law, which governs what we do. And we also have restrictions from the bankruptcy court and how the bankruptcy laws affect what we do. And I would say the number one bankruptcy restriction is this restriction of the pro rata share, that every claimant in a bankruptcy, no matter what kind of bankruptcy it is, has to receive the same pro rata amount. So the claim does not have to be the same, but the amount of the payment has to be the same every time there is a pro rata share. So with that, I think we should turn to the individual types of claims. So remember I said we have some 200,000 claims. The largest amount of claims we have probably are emotional distress and nuisance, but certainly the heart of the program, in addition to the emotional distress piece, is the real property claim. So we have, as I mentioned earlier, we have a team of led by lawyers who work for Brown Greer, who are in charge of our insurance property determinations and The real property claim includes claims for damage to residential or commercial real property, landscaping, forestry, other real property improvements such as fencing, pools, solar panels, hardscape, which is the landscaping around the house. And we take all of that into consideration. Phil's going to talk a little bit about how we put together a real property claim, what all we look at. So Phil?
Sure. I mean, this is a very sensitive area because people lost their homes in this fire, and we're in tune to that. And we want to be able to offer fair value for the house that you lost or your rebuild costs based on the requirements of the trust agreement in California law and the available funds in the trust. So I'll say again, and this is another way that I think this process is unique compared to my experience in different cases. In cases like this, programs like this, where there's unfortunately a disaster and a lot of people who are injured, it is not uncommon for the administrative team to say, everybody has to submit all their documents and we'll look at them and we'll tell you who's eligible and who's not. And that is true here. We are asking for pretty robust documentation submissions, but in a deviation from what I've seen in other programs, we're trying to be really proactive about the information that we can get to help make a claim complete or to ensure that it's paid its fair value. So on the subject of real property claims, while we do rely directly on information that attorneys have skillfully provided to us or claimants have submitted, we also look at insurance claim documentation because we're obligated to do that under the terms of the trust agreement. We are trying to go beyond that and look at independent information that will help us verify, for example, that a house was burned and how badly. Or we can learn something about rebuild costs in a certain area to help provide value when that might be ambiguous based on a submission that we receive at the trust. This helps us pay valid claims. And I should say, I guess, that it helps us prevent invalid claims from being paid because there is always a risk in a program like this one that some folks might try to deceive us and get a payment that they shouldn't. And so we have some tools at our disposal to prevent that from happening as well. But on this very important subject of the real property claim, helping people rebuild their lives, starting with their homes, we do ask for quite a few documents. In some cases, if a document isn't available, I mean, gosh, we know that very often these things were destroyed in the fire and the exact disaster that we have. We want to work collaboratively with attorneys or with pro se unrepresented claimants to help them supplement the file with something that would be just as good and would help us achieve the right result. Some of the things on the list you can see are pretty standard. There are some things that if you were unable to provide it, that wouldn't necessarily prevent us from issuing a determination notice. It just might mean that the determination notice doesn't include something that you want it to. And I'll stress again what Kathy has said more than once. You always have the option to submit new information to us if it helps make your file more complete or help us better understand the amount that you believe your home was valued at, what your rebuild costs will be.
Right. I was going to say, I want people to understand this is a list of documentation that helps us. It does not mean that you need to provide us with every one of these things. This is just a list of the kind of things that are helpful to us.
Right. Very true.
Okay.
And I want to.
Oh, do we want to stay back on that?
Well, I was just going to suggest maybe, Amy, this is the piece where insurance kind of fits in the most. And obviously with your expertise that we need the insurance, real property insurance policy, the homeowner policy. And while lawyers have given us the policies, the claimants have policies, we've also reached out, as I said earlier, directly to the insurance company to match the policies. And Amy has a lot of experience with that, helping us.
Yeah, I'll just note. So again, United policyholders, we focus on helping people get every dollar out of their insurance policies that they have paid for, right? It's very different from suing, making a claim against somebody who burn down your home, right? Very, very different, or an entity that may have had a role in burning down your home. I don't know. Okay, so but with insurance, you've got the policy, but as anybody who's watching knows, if you've been through any of our to our workshops in person or online, there's a lot of play in the insurance claim process in terms of how much money you actually recover, right? So certainly if you're a claimant and you have not provided a copy of your insurance policy to your lawyer or to or as part of your claim with the trust, you should do that immediately. But that is only part of the story, and that's been part of the challenge that has made this difficult for Kathy and Phil and their team. And that is that I don't know why it is so hard for insurers to provide very specific reports on how much they paid to each of their fire impacted customers in the claim process, but apparently it is, which means, and I know for a lot of you, you often you'll get checks during the claim process, and you generally will know what they're for, but sometimes it's a little it's confusing as to what bucket of whether that was for dwelling or contents or landscaping. Usually it's straightforward. So the bottom line is it has been challenging for the trust team to make sure to know what you've been compensated, what losses you've been compensated for by your insurance, and what losses you haven't. And I as I said, it would be great if the insurers would have just coughed that up for every single one of you. Okay, we paid the Cooper household this much for their landscaping, this much for their dwelling, this much for their contents, but for whatever reason, insurers have not been able to do that or not been willing to do that on a whole scale basis. So your lawyers have been trying to parse it. My organization did what we could. Linda Clam has been doing what she can. Even the Department of Insurance has tried, but it's just a challenge. So whatever information you have about how much money you got paid by your insurance company, that information should be provided as part of your claim. Fair enough?
Yep. Thank
Very
you.
fair. It's very fair. I'll just add one. Kathy, can I add one thing to what
Sure.
Amy said?
Yep.
In order for us to pay a real property claim, we will have had to do the analysis that Amy described, which is to say that we will review, the claims administrator and the claims processor will review the insurance claim file or other information that's been provided for insured people to make sure that we know exactly how much money your policy afforded you for different kinds of things. And the reason for that is because there's a specific provision in the trust agreement that requires the trustee and the claims administrator to offset that amount, which makes legal sense. But I want to stress that we're going to be very careful about how we do that, because we do not want to accidentally deduct money from your claim that applies to a different area of insurance than what you're actually claiming. So it's necessary for us to do this analysis, and we've reviewed literally millions of pages of insurance claim files to record the right information from the files. Very often we find it, most of the time we find it in the claim file. Sometimes we find that the claim file, for whatever reason, doesn't have it, and we need to go to the carrier and ask for it. And this is another area where we've seen tremendous help from claimants' attorneys. Fire victim attorneys have been enormously helpful in figuring out which of their clients have the right insurance policies and and this is a very tedious area, as everyone on the call knows. But we will make sure that we perform a full analysis of this before we send you a notice that involves a real property claim. We have to do that. This is one of those speed bumps. This is one of those things that can sidetrack a submission and delay the time in which we can send you an offer, because we need this information for every real property claim. But we're working to get it, and we're reviewing it as quickly as we can.
Yeah, I think that's the main point, is that this not being the ideal world where the insurance companies are providing the trust with a report for every single one of their customers. That means that the trust team and your lawyers and have had to really try to work very hard to find that information, and it's time consuming. But it just is what it is.
Exactly. There are more than 400 different kinds of different insurance companies, and it seems to me that every single one of them has a different way they do things. But as Amy and Phil said, we're diligently working on it as hard as we can, as are all of you. So we appreciate you working with us. The next claim type that is personal property, and these are claims for loss or damage to property such as clothing, furniture, tools, automobiles that were lost as a result of the fire. People are submitting personal property claims information to us, such as a list of what was damaged, proof of purchase, pre-fire, post-fire photos, appraisals, other documents that we have. And again, we understand that this is very difficult for you all to go through, to have to reconstruct what it was that you personally had and what it was that you personally lost. So again, we know it is not easy to put this together for us. And people have been wonderful in coming forth and giving us what it is we need so that we can put a value on these claims. I think we should jump to the next one. This is personal income loss, same kind of thing. Personal income loss is people who've lost wages as a result of the fire. And we take a look at all that information. We are personal income loss, we pay to the extent permitted by California law. So we look at income loss that resulted from destruction of property or serious personal injury directly related to the fire. So your income loss has to be related to the fire. And we look at that causal event in order to determine how much you have lost, or if you have lost an income claim. Same kind of thing for documents that help us. We look at tax returns, W-2, 1099, leases, rent checks, bank account statements, anything that helps us understand your personal income loss.
And I can throw in here, I'm not trying to make this take longer, I'm just trying to be
No.
helpful, that unlike your dwelling loss, your contents loss, if you were insured, you actually those things are those are compensable by your insurance company. But a lot of the time people will ask us at United Policyholders, what about all the time I had to put in putting my claim together, or meeting with people at the site of my loss, and I'm self-employed and I lost income because of this, and can my insurance company compensate me for that? And that's a very hard thing to get an insurance company to compensate you for. That's why United Policyholders got involved in educating you from the beginning about the fact that putting a claim in this process was a way to get compensated for things that insurance didn't compensate you for. So that this is a good example of that. Personal income loss claims, it's something that insurers will say, no, generally they're going to really balk at compensating you for the time that you put in, whereas here you have the opportunity to claim that.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I agree with that. So to clarify, this is to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're pointing out that this income loss, people who lost income as a result of property destruction, that's not an area that most insurance companies would pay for, right? That's not covered under people's policies.
No.
So it's true, though California law would allow, and I should be really clear here too, California law is not automatic that if you experienced a fire, you get paid for income loss. Your income loss has to come from certain consequences of the fire, specifically the destruction of property. So there are, unfortunately, people whose income streams were affected by the fire, but they didn't lose property and they weren't seriously injured. And under California law, those folks are not necessarily able to recover. And so we will not be able to pay some of these income loss claims. But I think it's good that you pointed out, Amy, that this is a damage category or a claim type that isn't really covered in the regular course of an insurance policy. Just to be really clear though, about one other thing, Amy, we have had people ask us whether we can compensate them for the time they spent getting documents together, to support a claim, which is a very reasonable question. But unfortunately, the answer is that we cannot. So we've been asked that question a lot. I want to be paid for the hours I spent putting together my claim or meeting with contractors or something like that. And while I'm very sympathetic to those things, that's not a compensable claim in this trust as it's currently configured. But I think your point's a really good one, Amy, because this is something that sort of stands apart from what they could get from their insurance carriers, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you both for that. The next claim type is the business income loss. And this includes claims for economic losses suffered by a business as a result of the fire, including loss of business property or inventory, lost profits, revenue. Many of the business loss claims also have a real property component to them because the business itself burned down. This is a very complicated area. We have a group of experts who are currently evaluating the business claims. We have an economic team, we have an accountants, and in some specific cases, we have retained experts to address the various categories of business losses. In kind of large chunks of business losses, we have wineries because of the North Bay fires. We have medical offices throughout all the fire areas. We have several golf courses. We have all kinds of independent businesses. For example, the auto mechanic, just every single kind of business you can think of has, as you all know, also lost their property. And we are looking at these claims very carefully with our experts. And we are getting tremendous amounts of information, which we appreciate from everybody. We're getting things like tax returns, property damage analysis, discussions of what the nature of the business is, exactly how many employees they had, what kind of work they did. There's specific insurance related to business claims. There's business insurance, business loss insurance. So this is another whole business arena that we're involved in, looking at those policies, figuring out which coverages apply and which don't. And then there's also extraordinary losses like lost equipment, lost inventory, and other expenses. So we're looking at this entire category. It has, I forget how many different kinds of businesses we have, but as you can imagine, we have, especially looking at the campfire, we have an entire community of businesses that have been lost. Phil, you have anything you want to add here in the business loss?
No, nothing too valuable. I mean, I just think you made a good point there that the nature of this disaster, it was so expansive that there are such a variety of people and businesses who are impacted, and that we really do require, as we discuss some of the more complex business claims where there might be a lot of different financial implications or business inventory that was lost, we really do require and benefit from the expert analysis of some economists and accountants. So we're grateful for that, because we are obligated above all to try to be really consistent and fair in the way we allocate the money from the trust, and this will help us do that.
And the next claim we're looking at are the wrongful death claims, and this is just the most serious claims, and really on our part heartfelt. We know that these are terrible incidents. and that everybody could not be more sympathetic to the claimants and the people who lost their lives as a result of the fire. That really it's just, there's nothing we can do or say can make that up. We take these very seriously. We try to be as sensitive as possible to everybody involved in these claims. We're working with people who just will never ever be made whole again, no matter what it is we do. We understand that there's really nothing we can do or say to make this better. We're trying our best. We have people looking at these claims who truly understand how terrible these situations are, and we're looking at them one by one. There are people have sent us films, pictures. I mean, they're heartbreaking. There isn't any other way. Phil and I have looked at their day in the lives that people put together for us, and really, again, they're just heartbreaking. So we are trying to review the wrongful death cases as quickly, and also the serious personal injury cases. There are some very difficult burn cases that we have. We're looking at them and trying to evaluate them as quickly as possible with the eye towards helping the survivors of those claims. The next sort of feeds into the personal injury claims. As I said, they're being reviewed by the same group of people who are reviewing the death claims. Again, we're looking at them very seriously. We need documentation, which the claimants and the lawyers have been providing for us. We're going to talk a little bit about liens in a moment, but we need medical records, which we're getting, bills we're getting, again, written narratives by the survivors, and in some cases by the folks who were injured directly. And we, of course, read all that information that's given to us. And emotional distress, these are sort of all related in a series here. In emotional distress, we are looking at the claimants who are what we call in the zone of danger. They were within the fire perimeter. They experienced emotional distress or mental anguish contemporaneous with the fire while evacuating or sheltering in place. I can personally tell you that I have reviewed approximately 5,000 of these emotional distress and nuisance claims. Again, it's just, what everybody went through, there just aren't words for it. So we are looking at every single one of these claims. We are reviewing it individually. We're reading people's narratives, and we are taking all of this very, very seriously. Phil's people do a wonderful, compassionate job. The next thing we're going to talk about are what we call unique considerations. So in all of these claims, we have a variety of additional things we're concerned about. One is liens. If there's a medical lien, we have hired a lien administrator. Their name is Wolf Garrettson. In my view, they are the best claims lien administrators in the country. Matt Garrettson and Jason Wolf, I also have known 20 years and worked with them on many projects. They were the initial, I think fair to say, the initial company that put together the lien, how you process a lien with Medicare, with Medicaid, how you deal with Aetna or Humana or what we call third-party lien claimants. It is a very I was going to use the word tedious job to deal with all these liens. Wolf Garrettson does a fantastic job. They have a relationship with Medicare, with Medicaid, and they are able to arrive at the absolute best and least expensive payment process. So they're helping us on that piece.
So would you say, Kathy, are we talking about thousands of liens in these that you're having to untangle
Yep, thousands.
before people can get their money? Gotcha. Okay.
Well,
Yeah,
go ahead, Phil, jump in here about how the liens work.
well, there are thousands of them, as you said, Amy. And what Wolf Garrettson is, one of the things that they're really good at is leveraging the sheer number of people who are impacted in their discussions with the providers to basically resolve or settle these for pennies on the dollar for what they would have normally cost. So that what it will do, it's sort of an underappreciated benefit in my experience. What it will do, it will take off the plate from the fire survivor the need to kind of give a portion of their money to some medical insurance provider who paid for some treatment that the claimant needed as a result of the fire. So we should be able to resolve these for a fraction of what the carriers would tell you they were worth. And this simply because these guys are experts in that kind of negotiation. And so that'll be an automated thing. It'll be an automated part of the process. So there might be, you might receive a determination notice. And if this applies to you, your lawyer will be told the trust is withholding a tiny fraction of the benefit, which is going to resolve your client's obligation to pay Medi-Cal or Medicare for treatment that you had received. So this was a concern of ours because so many people were impacted by this particular disaster, and we didn't want this to be a drag on the process. And they've really worked to help us get past this so that this won't be an impediment in the future.
And so is the pro rata process one way of getting money to people, at least some money to people,
Sure, yeah.
even if there's a lien in their situation that would otherwise be holding up the flow of all their compensation?
You're right. You're absolutely right, Amy. Because of the work that Wolf Garrettson did, they were able to corral this potential lien obligation in such a way to enable us to start to send pro rata payments, even if the specific details of a claimant's lien haven't been resolved. So there might have been a person who received 2 or 3 treatments for a medical injury that they suffered as a result of the fire. And while that lien still exists, we know that it's going to be small enough, thanks to the negotiation these guys have done, that we can still make your first pro rata payment without risking violating some kind of a legal requirement there.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it has definitely, this was a key obstacle that had to be overcome before we could even talk about making pro rata payments.
Okay.
Yeah, they have done an amazing job for us and continue to do an amazing job for us. A couple people asked us about deceased claimants, and we created a system which we hope addresses this, which is if a fire victim submitted a proof of claim form in the bankruptcy, so that's the up to December 2019. So if you submitted a claim form in the bankruptcy on or before December 31st, 2019, and died on or after that date, the trust will consider his or her claim preserved. This is, and I in the normal California law, when someone passes away, their claims are not preserved. But because we're concerned about the process and trying to pay as many people who absolutely deserve to get compensated, we extended the rule so that if you timely filed a proof of claim in the bankruptcy, and then the claimant passed away after that, after December 31st, we will consider that claim preserved. So we will reach out and to the estate or survivors and we will evaluate each one of those claims for eligibility. So that's something that I felt very strongly that we needed to provide for.
So, and that is significant, that I know that in, as a lawyer, normally, the death of the victim extinguishes, their recovery. So that's pretty significant. We did get a lot of questions from people who are, elderly and are worried that they might pass away before they get their compensation. Could you just quickly, if you may address this in another slide, but it seems relevant here.
Yeah, no, it is relevant here. We are very sympathetic, obviously, to that and understand it. What we try to do is one thing people have told us, and if you tell us, we keep track of it and we try to move your claim as quickly as possible. Both the pro se claimants and also the represented claimants, the lawyers have been very, very good about letting us know, these are my clients who fit in this category for whatever reason. They may be sick, they may be elderly, and can you please look at those claims as quick as possible.
Mhm.
We do take that into consideration. We try to move those claims. And again, I appreciate both the pro se claimants and the lawyers letting us know that. So the next sort of unique consideration we have is minors compromises. Excuse me. We have about 10,000 minors, and each one of those minors, almost each one, needs to have their claim looked at. Under California law, and really law all across the United States, the courts are protecting minors, and we have appointed Judge Ellen James, who was a judge for 25 years in Contra Costa County, and she is reviewing all the minors' claims. We've set up an expedited system so that she can take care of that, give her report to the court, and the court approves it. It is a shortcut so that we get people paid as quickly as possible. If we didn't have Judge James as the special master, every minor's comp would have to go back to the court. And you can just imagine that would be a very long process. So I'm very happy Judge James has taken on this task. Very, very quickly, we already talked about deficiency and determination notices. We'll skip that slide. And next slide. I'm just going to quickly tell you, you can look at these. This is what a determination notice looks like. It has your name, the law firm, and the amount of the claim. And you can see, you can accept, you can ask for reconsideration, and we'll take a look at the claim again. Next notice we got is what the reconsideration notice will look like. You can ask me to reconsider the entire claim, or you can just pick one of the claim types that you want to be reconsidered. And I believe this is the last slide. Is that right? Well,
Yes, the second to last.
yep.
I would just add something really quickly on the subject of those notices. So and it's okay, you don't have to go back, but we will be sending those to claimants' attorneys, as we're required to do. And attorneys work with their clients to make sure that they understand the notices and answer any questions about them. I use this word a lot. We hope this is a really collaborative process in the end. I know that there's nothing, the most important thing we can do is send money to eligible claimants so that you can rebuild your lives. But as this process plays out, as you get a notification from the trust and you have questions about it, or you want to supplement with additional information, whether it's a deficiency notice or a determination notice, I know I speak for Kathy because we've talked about it so much that we want to work with claimants and their attorneys to help perfect their claims to get them to the right value. We don't want this to feel like an adversarial process because that's not really our role. Our job is to pay eligible claims in compliance with the trust agreement. And so we want to facilitate that as much as we can. We got to follow our rules, But when people have questions and they want to send those questions to us through their lawyers, we want to be collaborative in our approach to resolving those questions.
Many, yep. And the last thing people asked us about, how can they figure out where in the process they are? And my advice there is that your law firms have access to the process. They can tell you where you are in the process, and to keep that flow. The pro se claimants have their own access to the portal, and they can check there for the same kind of updates. The last thing is, if you have questions or need more information, please reach out. We have a call center that works 12 hours a day. They are happy to answer your questions. We have information, we have email. Please feel free to reach out to us. As Phil said, we really want this to be a collaborative process. We are trying to be problem solvers, and our goal is to pay the claims as quickly as possible. I want to thank you all, especially Amy and Phil, for spending the hour and a half with us. And I want to thank all of you for helping us get this fire victims paid. We really, really appreciate all your effort and thoughtfulness. So thank you very much, and I appreciate the time you gave us.
Well, thank you, Kathy and Phil, and all of you who sat through the program. I know that there's lots of more questions, but that I think we covered all the basics. There's still some unknowns about the total amount of money that will be available eventually to be given away, but clearly the wheels are turning to get money into people's hands. That much is clear. And so with that, we're gonna sign off. We will make this recording available through our website, and I really wish all of you well. Our organization is always rooting for people who've gone through what you all have gone through, and are committed to getting information to you that will help you put the situation as much as in the rear view mirror as possible, which is always a relative thing. So be safe, and thank you for your time, all of you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.